So please join me on the upper stage, our speakers, starting with Mr. Willis Wee, CEO and founder of Tech in Asia. Adrian Ang, also known as Professor, co-founder of HEPMIL Media Group. Chua, Tian, broadcast panelists, and moderating the panel is from Augustine. I hand the platform over to Prof.
So the first question I want to pose to the panelists is, what is the state of the media industry from your respective media space? Willis, you go first.
Oldest and start first, yeah. 2011. Okay, overview of the landscape. So, first of all, just some context. Like Tech in Asia, we make money from like subscription, right? So, if any of you want a discount for subscription, anyway, point being is that like we obviously talk to the users quite a bit, and then when the users subscribe, they subscribe because they want some insights, right? And they want to have like information, our company database, investigative journalism, all this kind of stuff, right? So the current landscape right now is actually very disruptive, right? Because of AI. So one of the things that we used to do very well, but we can't really compete with AI, is that when people, for example, right, they want to ask about like which are the top 10 fintech companies, they could easily just put it on like ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT will hallucinate and then give a bunch of like answers that sounds right. So that's very disruptive to us because we used to be able to do that job, but right now, AI is doing much better than us. Right? So that's something that we kind of like realized quite quickly, and it's something that we are trying to navigate. So I would say that it just, in a very short sentence, it's actually very disruptive right now, but it's also super exciting. It's super exciting because it allows like us to rethink about like what's like the value of media, what's the value of content, and kind of like reshape how journalism and also media products should actually stay sticky and useful. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, for us at HEPMIL, so, I run SGAG, I'm a creator myself, we also have like a creator network across Southeast Asia. So I think for us, the space is really, really exciting. I think, social media has been around since, 10, 15 years ago, but I think the shape and form has changed like a lot. I think especially when TikTok came along, I think that really changed the game for a lot of people. I think before that, maybe social media from a content and creative point of view, it has maybe reach a little bit, it's a little bit stagnant because there were like big players, and you can count with two hands and 2 feet, who's around, and the barriers to entry for creators are really, really high. You need like a full studio, you need complicated software, but TikTok came along, and then with the app itself, it has all the tools that you need, all the music, licensing, editing tools, and whatsoever. Content creation then became like a very easy game for everybody. And I think fueled by COVID, where everybody had nothing to do but consume content, I think that was when there was a real rise in social media. And because TikTok came along, I think the format itself has changed, right? From longer format content, 2 to 5 minutes in the past was considered short. These days anything more than 60 seconds or even 30 seconds is considered long. So I think that has really changed in terms of the way that marketers or even content creators tell stories. Now you have a shorter amount of time to maybe share the same amount of information. How do you do that in an engaging, entertaining, educational, informational way? That itself for us is something that is exciting. Exciting in terms of like how can we tell stories in a different way on different platforms. So I think that is where, I feel like, for the creator economy is very exciting because of TikTok. It has given birth to a lot of creators. Now, many of you guys, I'm sure, sitting over here are creators yourself in one way or another. Whether it's your Instagram or on TikTok, it doesn't, maybe you haven't, reached a certain traction to call yourself an influencer, but, trust me, you'll get there, I'll give you some tips. But it is an exciting space because I think it's reached a day and age where, as compared to maybe in the past where content or communication is a little bit more top-down controlled by a few large organizations. I think with creators, it's kind of decentralized, right? It's really creators who has that voice, who has that community, and therefore the ability to connect with audiences for brands. So I think for us, from our perspective, new media, digital media, we are maybe only at the start of what will be a very exciting era. I'm happy to share more about this later on as well.
Thank you much, Adrian. Tian, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Tian. I usually ask questions in my line of job, so I am very not used to being asked questions and having to answer them. It's my first time speaking, so please give chance. Yeah, so I think the bigger question is whether broadcast media is still valued at this time and this day and age. And if we turn the clock back to the COVID-19 pandemic 5 years ago, that was when I started my career as a TV journalist. That was when I think there was uh, I don't know whether to describe it as a reset, but I think broadcast media and traditional forms of media were back in focus again. People were looking for trusted source of media, and that's when I think that momentum is still sustained until today at least. The question though is, what format are you consuming from? Because you could be consuming from mainstream media outlet, but you won't be consuming from the traditional broadcast like the TV shows that's played out every day. So that whatever format that's being consumed, that's a question that we'll talk about later on. Yeah. The second part of the thing is supply for news. Are newsmakers still willing to come on board on traditional forms of media? Are they still willing to be part of broadcast media interviews and etc.? From my experience, and this is a personal experience, is that I do think so. And in fact, a lot of the C suites and C-1 guests are still willing to come on board. It shows that broadcast media still has its value, still retains a certain level of you call it legacy, you call it trust. So that's that. But then again, when these newsmakers come on board to the show, instead of coming on board for a short 30-second soundbite, for a short 5 minutes interview, they're coming on board for podcasts, they're longer form. They're coming on board for casual videos that can be filmed using a handphone, for instance. The format of consumption has changed greatly. The acceptance of guests to different setups, different modes of filming, that's changed greatly. Also, as a result of the should I call it the liberation of the media market? There's a lot of social content creation going on. So that's where I see the landscape to be at this point.
So can I ask you, how have the media responded to the changing media consumption habits? And how have they adapted to how people consume news at this point? Willis, you want to take it?
Okay, I mean, before AI, the way that we do research, right? It's like we put it into the browser and then click, right? And then we try to read every single article and then try to synthesize, put it into like Google Docs or like the notepad, and then try to make sense out of like what you have read, right? Nowadays, I think the user behavior has like changed quite a bit, right? So when we look at how the users, like some of our users actually do research, right? A lot of them just go straight to Claude, go straight to ChatGPT, answer questions, right? And they don't even, scroll down and look at the reference and the source, and they just take it as things, right? So actually, how many of you guys are guilty of, right? Guilty of just using ChatGPT and then take that as like a final deep research and take that as fact, right? Yeah. I'm guilty as well. Yeah. So I think it's just convenience, right? It's like a very frictionless like user experience. So I think that's the truth of like how a lot of us are kind of like consuming content, right? Whether or not is it through the an AI interface, yeah, but very few people are clicking into an article, and that's a fact, right? So I mean, there are a couple of things whereby how we look at this, right? So it used to be, for example, like you have to look into like SEO. Now you have to look into like what does like AI SEO actually mean? Yeah, how much content you expose, right? Like what kind of permission do you put in your robot pets, and will you trust the LLM to actually respect, the stuff that you allow them to explore, right? But also at the same time, you have to understand, at least for us, is that we have a lot of proprietary information and data, and those are the things whereby it's our moat. So we actually do not expose them, to any crawlers and LLMs. So I think that's like the first thing, right? Is that the proprietary data is definitely a moat and you should really go and protect it. So I think it's a bit of like thing, attack and at the same time like defense. We haven't quite figured out like the attack. I mean, we have some hypothesis, but it doesn't mean that it will work. But I would say that like while we still try to figure out like the how to navigate the new user behavior, right? One of the things that we kind of like did very differently is that while we are still trying to figure out the user behavior, we actually work on the things that are much more low hanging fruit, right? So I know that not quite answering your questions, but I thought it's important to share that like we haven't quite figured out how to deal with the changing user behavior except for like AI, SEO, and all the simple stuff. But I think what AI has given to tech in Asia is that we really, like I would say, easily 2x, 3x our productivity. So like I think we're one of the very rare media, like if you read reports right now, right? Like all the media would say that their traffic kind of like went down, SEO went down, everything goes down because obviously ChatGPT kind of like took a lot of traffic. And ChatGPT is very disruptive, super disruptive, right? You just check all your SEO, like it's climbing all the way up as we go. So the thing over here is that like we use it as a productivity tool. So meaning that like instead of like putting in the same manpower cost, right? We take that as like a cost advantage on how can we reduce our cost. Yeah. So I would say that like we're at a stage right now. I'm happy to elaborate like how we do that, but I feel like just quick overview on how we deal with that disruption.
I think with social media, I'm sure you guys know. I mean, even through scrolling your own phone. I mean, I don't think it's even 3 seconds. I don't think you give any video 3 seconds. Like 0.3 seconds, you kind of look at it briefly, and then you decide whether you want to continue watching it. And even after that 0.3 seconds, almost every second you're evaluating should you continue or not. So I feel like that has really changed storytelling a lot. I mean, in the past when we watched YouTube, because it's search based, you search for something because you are specifically looking for something. Therefore, you're willing to kind of invest a lot more time to continue watching a video, even though the setup might be long, they might be have a long like introduction. Now it's very discovery based content, right? So it means that when it comes to TikTok, when it comes to mainly on TikTok, right, it is really stuff that you didn't even sign up for. And you're evaluating video by video whether you should kind of continue. And I think that changes storytelling a lot, right? Even from the actual like hook, like what are you actually delivering to the audience? Is it information? Is it education? Is it entertainment? Right? You determine that very, very clear, whether you're a content creator, whether you're like a brand, and then from a storytelling, really how do you make it it's not as easy to say that, to make it like snappy, like a snappy video. I mean, I'm sure everybody's like kind of understand that. But how do you really turn a paragraph of what you're trying to tell the audience into really bite-sized information where every 3 seconds you're providing with them with something new, something useful that they can take away. And I think that for us, from the early days of SGAG doing comedy content to like us doing comedy content now, it has changed. Like the way that we do informational content, it has changed a lot. I think that in a way also determine like really what kind of creatives we hire and how like what Willis mentioned, right? How even tools like ChatGPT can help us refine a lot of that creative workflow. Because without that, it might take a long, long time, right, to kind of hone that craft and be able to tell interesting, informational, educational content, right, in a very short and snappy way. Yeah, so I think we briefly talked about how it's not that long form is dead. I think long form is actually coming back, but I think the way that creators or brands do long form has got to be different. Right? You need to think of long form as like almost 10 minutes worth of short videos compiled into long form. It's not a 10-minute video where you can slowly set it up, then a little twist at the end. That kind of thing. Nobody's gonna watch all the way until the end unless you're stuck in the theater. Yeah, so I think that is how we see the change in say user behavior and how has that informed a little bit of our strategy when it comes to digital and the media.
Thank you, Adrian.
I think like maybe Willis and Adrian, you guys come from a company-wide perspective, right? So maybe I'll share as a producer for a certain segment or certain interview for a niche community like business audience, how it would be like. Because sometimes you don't have access to that vast data or the workings of the entire company per se. But as a producer, what I can say is that sometimes because different media outlets, we used to define ourselves. I'm from podcasts, I do videos. I'm from print, I do articles. I'm from radio, I do audio. But it's not the case anymore because we see different media outlets creating video, audio, podcasts, and etc. So then positioning becomes very important because instead of identifying as you're of a certain type of media based on the technology you own, be it the radio broadcast waves, be it the printing technology that you have, you are now defining based on the audience that consumes your news. That's number one. So based on the audience, let's say in the case of business interviews, some VC players, intent becomes very important. So venture capitalists will listen to the show. People like C-suite C-1s, they are looking up for whether you can have actionable insights in your podcasts and your interviews that they can help them spur business partnerships. So in that case, when you look at an audio interview, in the past, people will say that for audio interviews, people are usually listening while they are exercising, while they're driving, and etc. So it has to be very easily absorbed. But in the case of a community like that, if you provide a very brief podcast, brief conversations, it doesn't suit the needs of the audience. Then when it comes down to the multi-formats, we do have some audience requesting, hey Tian, with generative AI, I don't have time to listen to the whole 45 minutes. Generative AI can come up with a transcript for me, and I want to read it instead. So in that case, when it comes down to the curation of content for specific podcasts, for specific interviews, are you going to go content heavy and put out all the numbers, all the facts so that your audience can make decisions on the go? Or do you want to go for very broad strokes so that it was easily consumed? I think that is the biggest change right now because we are no longer confined to the traditional definition of what radio should be, what TV should be, what print should be. I think that has changed a lot. And also in the case of, I think generative AI has increased the speed of content curation and content creation as well. So once there's a trend, you see a lot of people hopping on the trend. You see a lot of content being produced, and I think it does create a sense of, oh, should I also cover this? Should I also cover that? And if I want to do an audio podcast, should I also do a video version of this? Should I also do a video version of that? Should I also write print articles and print social media posts on this and that? Then at the end of the day, I think it is back to basics. It's back to what is exactly the positioning and the prerogative of the media outlet, and knowing what to do and whether to hop on to trends is of course important, but I think knowing what not to do and where you are not going to go is also very important so we don't get distracted, so to speak.
Thank you all. You all talk about responding to changing media consumption needs. Can I ask you for your thoughts about what are the audiences wanting right now? What kind of audience are you dealing with at this point in time? Adrian, you alluded to the fact that they're impatient, possibly. Willis, you alluded to the fact that possibly they could get information from somewhere else other than from publication. And Tian, your audience are very specific. They are business executives. They have different needs. So, quick observations. What do audiences want from your respective media spaces?
I think for us, because when it comes to the content creation space, there's a lot of like creators that's out there. And I feel like, for audiences, they are viewing towards, authentic content. Right? Something that they feel like it comes from the heart, something that is actually relevant and valuable and useful for the community that's out there. And I think this is especially, for branded content, and we're going to cover that a little bit more later. Yeah, but branded content, we have a lot of creators work with brands, and I think, as consumers, as audiences with consuming content, you can smell an ad like from a mile away. Right, so what would make you want to consume, right? A creator who's working with a brand. I think authenticity is a big part. How you tell story, what kind of stories do you tell, what kind of formats do you use? I think that is really one key thing that I feel that audiences are looking for. And in this day and age where there's a sea of creators, there's a sea of content where everybody is in a way same but different. I think being uniquely yourself and being able to tell stories in a unique way, right, will make a particular creator stand out from everybody else. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so our readers they want two things. First one, it's what we call like unknown. You wake up, you don't know what's going on in tech, so you go into tech in Asia, and then we give you all the relevant stuff that we think that you should know. So this is actually a very huge opportunity for us. So our news desk, we used to have like 2 people. So right now is that these 2 people used to cover say 10 pieces of news as pre-AI. Today they cover like 1,300 news, and each of these news like we make the workflow so thoughtful that we kind of like mimic that deep research that a human would actually do. I mean, I can go on to that, but that's a bit too geeky. So the key thing here is that like we, for the unknown, which the users rely on us, right, to know what's happening in tech. The few things that we are very careful about is like the timing, like attention. So say for example, if they click on an article about Grab, right? Say Grab buys something. Okay. Let's be careful with the words. And of course, like then we know, right? For sure that the user is interested in Grab, and because the user is interested in Grab, we not just tell the user the news, we also tell the users like what are some of the things that is revolving around this news that will give you very, very deep insights. Let's just say that if Grab buys over another taxi company, right? Like our workflow, we're able to look into the past 20 years of history and are able to, for example, right, potentially give you one of the past deals that Grab did or like its competitors did, what is the valuation, what is the past performance, why they did it, how did it fare after that, and how will it affect, the current landscape. So these are some of the stuff whereby if a human will do it, it takes at least, say, 3 hours, right? But if you do a very thoughtful workflow and really break it down, you instantaneously give the user insight. So we save the business executive time. Then after that, at the bottom, we pull out all the timeline in very visual manner so that they understand like all the context. So that's really to resolve that unknown and to give them all the things that they want in 30 seconds. The second part is much, much harder, right? Which is what we call like the known unknown. So these are things whereby you know that you need, but you don't have the answer. So most people go to ChatGPT, so we can't compete with ChatGPT, right? So, but we can't like distill it down that like our users, say for example, a VC or a company that's trying to acquire another company. So at that point, in a specific time event, for example, if you're trying to buy, say for example, another taxi car, right? So for the acquirer, what's very, very important at this point of time, at this specific time event, is that you want to know what are the valuation of all the past acquisition? What's like the revenue multiples that the buyers paid for? What's the lowest multiple that they pay for? How did they do that? Right? But this information or insight to the acquirer is not insightful to you or to me. Right? So it's very, very time specific. So we can't provide that yet. But I think it's something that we're thinking very deeply about online because we have the data, proprietary, public, and the density of like tech business. So we're thinking about like what is like an agent that look like that will actually service like this very specific needs at a specific time frame. We haven't quite figured it out. Yeah. So kind of like negotiating now. Thank you.
Well, I think so if you look at business community, niche business community, especially in the case of C-suites and C-1 listeners of podcasts, they're looking out for two things. One, actionable insights that they do not know about that they can, on the go, hey, maybe I should meet this particular person and do certain things or work on a partnership. That's one. Number two is they're looking out for connections as well. Another thing is when you target the business community and target C-suites, a lot of C-suites actually know each other already, particularly if they're in similar or adjacent industries. The question for an individual producer rather than somebody from management and company-wide perspective is how is I as a producer going to know more about certain industry and to know more about the entire business landscape than my listeners who are already very well versed and well connected in their own sphere. So then from a production standpoint and a producer standpoint is I then have to go broad. So if you're in the industry, for instance, in the VCs know each other quite well. Let's say in Southeast Asia, they are, very, very well connected. Then you need to find VCs from abroad, maybe in the US, maybe in Europe. So if you are looking at let's say business in F&B, the F&B businesses and people in the adjacent, let's say packaging industry and all that, they would be well connected. You need to find someone from a totally different industry, like a software industry. And turns out these people from different industries can still work together in many ways because you can be an F&B company, but you have back-end resources, you have back-end software needs, and you can connect them with this software company. So that is where we are coming from, going broad. You also have to look at different geographies because people in certain geographies are very close knitted. So then the question is, how do you do that as an individual producers? How do you do more groundwork and know more than your guests or your newsmakers? I think that is the biggest challenge, at least for me on a personal perspective.
Let's talk about something that recently happened in Singapore. The general elections has just passed. What are your observations about the role the media played in this GE? But first and foremost, would you talk about whether you reported or not? So at least we know where you're coming from.
Who's the Can you understand? I mean, so for HEPMIL or for SGAG, we don't touch politics. So during this entire GE, we just kind of cover whatever is interesting, lah. Yeah, but I think because we are in the media space, I do observe a lot of things during this particular GE. I think this GE is really interesting in the sense that the social media, right, it is the norm. Right, everybody has social media presence. Everybody has social media account, and if I were to honestly say that a lot of them, the politicians, they all have their own PR team, they have their own marketing team. So you see all videos, and there's like a strategy for all the different candidates going to this particular G. So that's really interesting to see because if you really just think back 1 to 2 Gs ago, those who engage on social media, they just far and few in between. But now it's like the norm. It's like you don't do it. It's like almost like you are in the dinosaur living not in this world. So that's a really, really interesting observation. Which I'm sure you guys all know as well. But I think you can really, at least for me, you can really see how during this campaigning period, and especially for the G, the shaping of public opinion is done a lot through social media. Whatever you say or don't say is put under a microscope, right? You could go viral for good or wrong reasons, like looking left, looking right, or wake up and assume that that kind of thing. Little interesting nuggets like that, especially for new candidates, it just forms an opinion and perception of that particular candidate almost immediately. Because for the public who has not worked with this particular individual, I don't know who you are. The first point of contact that I know is based off this public persona that you put on social media. I think that's why the strategy when it comes to social media for a lot of these politicians or a lot of these candidates is super critical at this particular, especially by what I observed at this particular GE. If you ask me honestly whether anybody really stood out, I honestly don't think so. Yeah, honestly, it stood out for the wrong reasons that you feel lah. Right? I feel like every 5 years is almost like a comedy show sometimes. Right? It's a national comedy show where some of these people just come out and hey, the Singapore Idol time. Lose my 30,000 deposit and put up a good show for Singaporeans. But I would say generally speaking, it's good to see everybody actively using social media, right, to talk about not just what they are campaigning for, but also show a little bit about who they are, which is important, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't just want to vote somebody who is able to bring up, a certain issue or problems. I also want to know who is the human behind. How well each candidate does that, I think it really depends from candidate to candidate. But it is just a very interesting observation to see. Yeah, so I think that is, I would say, a very PR safe answer.
This G, I think AI really helps to maybe surface a lot of very interesting content. So, for example, you can see at least within our community, data scientists and data engineer, right? They'll just pull the data from data.gov, and then they'll just start to type code and create kind of some form of visualization. So every 5 years it's just very difficult kind of look back, connect the dots, who said what, and in what topic, right? But it becomes so much easier, right? When you can just use AI to kind of visualize a lot of those parliamentary channels. And then another thing that I also observed is that every party has its own manifesto. So you just dump it into Gemini, right? 1 million contacts, and then you just compare, right? And I thought it's wow, very interesting, creative use case. And it's such a dense document, and you can kind of just upload it and really go and talk to the AI, right? And kind of query and ask what does this party think about very specific stuff, right? And before AI, you have to really go and like command F and look for keywords, which is very, very easy. Yeah. And I think the third thing is that, again, like we have some independent candidates, right? And they come from a tech background. So some of them actually are very, very creative, right? The whole website, everything, it's all by coded, right? And it's all tuned just based on like AI. And every single thing from like distribution marketing, all AI, right? So again, I wouldn't say to go as far as like AI help them read books, but I would say that AI definitely help them to be much more productive so that they can actually do like the actual human stuff, right? Like off the ground, things like machine can't do.
So can I just add something? I mean, there's one thing that I kind of missed out. I mean, for this G is how I saw all the different parties, politicians, candidates, all actively engaging creators. They are on every single web podcast, which is something that is unseen before. Because I mean, usually all this debate between parties used to be done on like just national broadcast, but now they're on every single podcast every single day. They're collaborating with every single creators out there. I feel like it also has shifted in the sense that how people view being involved or talking about politics. And in the past, we're all very conservative, don't dare to talk about who we support, don't dare to air our views. But now even like creators, they're openly sharing about what they think, openly interviewing or talking to different candidates from different parties. So I feel like the perception and the attitude towards politics and getting involved in it has shifted a lot this particular GE.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I usually cover financial news, so I haven't been covering general news for quite a while, close to 3 years already. And like a true financial journalist, this year in May, I was actually in Omaha in the US, and I was attending this Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway's shareholder meeting as a shareholder, and Warren Buffett announced his retirement then. So if you recall, the date was the 3rd of May. I didn't know, and I booked my tickets the year before. December the year before because it's usually always fully booked. And yeah, so on the 3rd of May in US morning time, if you recall, that's when, they're counting the votes. So I'm like all of you, I'm just scrolling, trying to scroll through my, my phone. And you can, if you know the arena at Warren Buffett's shareholder meeting is like a big arena with 40,000 attendees there, all using internet at the same time. So I was still also trying to get news at the point. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Tian. I hope you had a good experience in Omaha. Yeah. Okay, we have two more things that we want to discuss, and then we open the floor for Q&A. The first thing I want to seek your thoughts is the monetization of content in your respective media spaces. This is part and parcel of the modern media game now. What are your thoughts, and how do your respective media spaces monetize content?
I think for the creator space or content space, I mean how we've done it, I think you guys are very familiar. I mean it's true branding content. A lot of creators they work with brands, weaving marketing messages into their content that is hopefully educational, informational, or entertaining. I mean how well creators monetize their content really depends on a lot of different factors. But I think the shift that we definitely see is in a lot of big companies, agencies, or even government agencies really tapping into creators. But I think which is an amazing thing because I think what creators have built is a community. I see them as a little bit of like I would say, the kampong chiefs, right? They have that little kampong, the little community that they have built. And I feel like it is extremely thankful and smart of I would say brands to tap on this community because I mean I think there are two ways to go about doing it when it comes to brands and social media, right? It's either you set up your own profile and you build your own community, or I think the alternative is there to tap on creators. And the truth is that for brands it might be a challenge, right? Because not I mean if you really think about it, like how many brands do you guys actually follow on your own account? right? Do you follow like just these random brands that you purchase from? Probably not, right? You purchase from them, but you don't necessarily would follow their social media account. So I think this is where creators really do come in, because all of these creators, they have their own community, they have their own niche, right? I think gone are the days where I would say communities are very generic, and they're just same but different target, like 1834. I think creators are moving more and more into their like own niche. Like, so say for example, myself, I do a lot of like parenting content right now, so I share a lot of parenting tips, my slice of life kind of content to really connect with this particular group of audience. So therefore, when it comes to brands who wants to work with to tap on to reach out to parenting like community, it makes sense to tap on parent creators like that. Yeah, so I think this is where how monetization has really been for the past couple of years in the content creation or creator space. But I think something that's, I guess, exciting, that is maybe you guys have seen as well. Every night there are a couple of influencers or even celebrities going live, right, on TikTok, just selling all sorts of random things. I think it is it's obviously referencing China, where live selling is huge. But I think in some other parts of Southeast Asia as well, like Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, even Malaysia. I mean, everywhere other than Singapore, it is all picking up a lot of attraction. And I think it is, from a marketing point of view, is good, because for the longest time, right, when it comes to social media, it's very, very top funnel, like kind of awareness driven, like kind of campaigns. And for the longest time, marketers have always asked, or brands have always asked, where is the ROI? Where is the, how do I directly attribute to people buying my product? So I think this is what live selling has managed to open up, like this real like bottom funnel. Um, Whether you take off in Singapore, to me, I feel honestly that Singaporeans are too small. Right? So I think there will be a certain level of traction, but because Singaporeans, we get access to all kinds of products so easily, right? Whether it's through Lazada, Shopee, or even like a physical mall that's nearby, but it's so easy for us to get our products that I just don't see the need to sit through a 1 hour live stream to get the exact same product. Like, even sometimes I see the product on live stream, I'll just go to like Shopee, I'll just I see the product and go there and search and I just buy it today. So I think that is one. I think the other one is access to goods. I think why live selling works in certain countries is because the access to certain products is just not there. Maybe they live in a rural countryside, they don't get access to shopping malls, or they don't get access to like Korean products, but maybe their local malls just don't carry it. Whereas in Singapore, we really get almost anything and everything that we want. It's just a tip of our finger. Yeah, so I think live selling is something that's definitely exciting. There might be a certain category of goods that might work, like luxury, right? I mean, somebody flies in Paris and buy luxury goods for me through live selling and gives me a 30% discount. Makes sense. Yeah, so I think this is how the monetization side in the new media space has been, and how it has been slowly changing as well.
Thank you. So I think when we think about monetization in like the age of AI, I think two like broad school of thoughts. The first one is kind of like, what is the anti-AI, right? What are the things that machine cannot do, right? So great, like the jobs of our users, right? They ask tech in nature to fulfill is, at the end of the day, it's insights and connections. Very simple. So like connections are things that advance business, right? And business broadly, could be your professional career, could be a deal that you're trying to make, fundraising, raising from an LP, etc. Right. So the fundamental of any kind of like deals is human relationship, right? So when you think about that and you work backwards, right, really understanding the needs of the users and kind of like work backwards. Events, for example, it's still does really very well. And it's something that we really focus on and really try to enhance that connection, right? So when the way that we think about events is that first cannot be replaced by AI, right? So you still have to physically hear, head, smile, talk to their name, right, and Tian, right, and shake the hand, right? So that kind of like human to human, right, is irreplaceable, right? Don't think AI can replace that. But however, the way that we think about it is how can we quicken the entire kind of like whole start, right? When you walk through the event, the first thing you think, right, is that, yeah, Tom Liao, I don't know anyone, right? So how can we actually kind of like shorten that thing, right? So that's the part where like AI can help again, right? So you can use like AI to create kind of like simple door games, and then all the way how you connect people. Simple things like hacks like this, right? So for example, one of the events that we do is that we actually put in like a blank. What do you want? So some people would just say that like want job, I want revenue, I want funding, right? So that kind of like creates like very intimate conversation, right? Um, so another school of thought is like insights. So again, insights. I talk a lot about like what AI can do, but what AI can't do, right? AI cannot do this kind of interview, right? AI cannot read like body language. AI cannot look through financials and catch fraud, right? I mean, maybe it can, right? But of course, like there's a lot of context that you have to put, right? To put it, yeah, and kind of like connect the dots between two domains, right? So AI can't do a lot of this kind of stuff, right? Do big interviews. So a lot of our content, you kind of like focus on things like that, you know. So I mean, one of you guys over here say that like you remember Tech in Asia as like publication and not like investigative journalism, right? So that's kind of like what we are known for, right? And it really sticks to people's mind. So we keep focusing on things that AI can't do, right? Of course, for the use of AI, if I say,
Do you want to talk about the use of AI?
Let's talk about monetization.
Monetization.
We'll save the AI for the
Okay.
audience.
So monetization, I think for a producer, usually monetization happens further, up in the hierarchy. But I mean, as a producer, when you kind of come up with a certain segment, when you come up with a certain series, for instance, I think the most important thing is who are you targeting? That's number one. Number two is what exactly is the positioning of the segment or the show. So it's not about what you want to, because as a producer yourself, sometimes when you're very passionate about certain things or passionate about or chasing after the different news that's happening every day, you can get lost in terms of the content that you're producing. So I think it's important to track the different content that you've been producing over the months, over the years, and to ensure that you're staying true to your positioning and true to your target audience and true to what your target audience wants to achieve, be it connection, be it retention. And going forward, you always think about how to build on top of the series that you've created. So let's say if you're building a podcast series, is it to target a certain business ecosystem? Are you always growing the ecosystem with every single interview that you do? And I think if we get that sorted out, that leaves the way very nicely for monetization or the possibility of monetization down the road. I think if you look at LinkedIn, it is a blank canvas, just like how it is in terms of Instagram and in terms of Facebook. What is different about LinkedIn is number one is professional networking. Number two is that if you sign up for LinkedIn, you get direct access. You can throw in a letter to anyone that you want, so long as they allow it in the inbox. So then the question is, how do you want to position yourself? Would you want to position yourself based on retention, based on high quality network, or are you going for scale? That will then determine your content strategy, right? But what I do realize on LinkedIn is that sometimes certain posts do well, or certain things people will comment or share. Actually, it's because you know the context already. So you already know them, be it through coffee chats, be it during networking sessions, be it at panel discussions. So the people are actually connected in some way, which is why certain posts actually do well. So a lot of times, if you look at people who do well over the longer run, it's because they have been actively building their network, both online and also offline. So I think online and offline is very important, particularly in the case of LinkedIn, because we are not, in that sense, trying to target a wide range of audience. It's more of building a very connected community, both online and offline. Yeah.
Gentlemen, you have anything to add on LinkedIn?
Great answer.
I think just be authentic, right? Doesn't mean that people go on like whatever platform, whatever you have to go, right? I think at the end of the day is that like if you're being yourself, then I think that's enough. Yeah. So I didn't feel any FOMO, like I have to do this, I have to do that. Yeah, if you Google around, I think a lot of people wouldn't think that I'm actually the founder of Second Nature. Yeah, and I'm perfectly okay with it. Right? Just focus on myself.
Like being authentic, being yourself.
I mean, it is very tempting to track the numbers, but if you be yourself, I think that's how you can be in the game for the long run. Yeah. So I was just at this ATX summit, attending an OpenAI forum just now, and I was telling the head of OpenAI, what's it called, public policy, for APAC, and I said, as journalists, we see ourselves sometimes as craftsmen, right? But when the craft can be done by machines, what then become of us? Then she said, no, I don't think you guys are craftsmen because there's more to that. And I think the connection, the touch and feel that we have on the ground, number one, is important. And the second thing is, this is one that I always check with my friends, right? Whenever we talk about AI, I like to say that in the past, let's say when we make bags, it's made by hand, right? Hands on. Then when factories came, machines came, it's all made by machines. But if you go and look at the luxury bags and you pay huge sums of money for bags, you would expect it to be hands-on, isn't it? So I think it's an opportunity for us to excel. Now, then the question is, how do you leverage AI for your mundane work, like let's say transcribing things? Let's say to make sure that when you finish doing your work, okay, can you just please see if I missed out anything? Because sometimes you can do your background check, but it appears in, let's say, 10, 20 pages down your Google search, you can't find it. Generative AI might be able to. But at the end of the day, I think the personal struggle is as a producer, as a journalist, you want to write, you want to produce things. What would that make me special? What would my touch and feel be? I think this is something that's very intangible. That's number one. Number two also is, uh, you're trying to struggle with using technology. That's also what I think. Because one day, I'll share this story. I was interviewing one C-suite executive, and we were just chatting quite happily. And I spent about 1.5, 2 hours coming up with a set of questions for him. And he said, wow, this set of questions very comprehensive. You put it in ChatGPT. And I'm like, it hurts, lah. It hurts. So then the question is, when you put in a lot of work and it looks like it's ChatGPT done, it makes you question what exactly is my positioning in this industry. But I think this is something that we'll try to navigate, something that's very intangible, I feel. Yeah.
Gentlemen, you want to take a step?
I think the way that we kind of look at it, maybe in my space of my own personal experience, is I think what we're looking for right now is maybe AI powered like creators. And I feel like, it's about who can leverage AI the best. Because I mean, there's no question in terms of what AI can do for us already, in terms of what it can replace. I think the question is which creator, which creators can write the best prompt, right? Can refine that prompt, right, to get to the best idea in the shortest amount of time. I think that is just the name of the game, right, for a lot of us. So I mean, even for my own content creation, like in the past couple of months, I mean, every day I'm just throwing ideas into AI, not to kind of replace the entire, idea generation process, but really to help me kickstart, right, to help me see which idea is better, help me pick out the certain blind spots that I don't see necessarily myself. And I feel like that is gonna be what is gonna define or differentiate, right, creators and creators like moving forward. Because I mean, AI is here to stay. Right, it's really who can use AI like the best, in the most efficient, and in delivering the best quality in terms of like content. I think that is the way that we kind of see it.
Thank you. Willis? Pretty much the same actually. So I think they touch on like more personal use individual use, right? Maybe I touch more like organizational point of view. So from organizational point of view, we look at it from like end user. What do they want, right? If they want insights, if the users do not care whether you spend 10 hours, 15 hours to produce an insight, right? Like no one cares. They only care about whether is that indeed an insight. So typically what we do is that we look at like before AI, like what does like a human look like, right? And you really break it down to say, for example, like you create an analysis, right? You break it down like 10 steps, right? I'm not going to say the 10 steps, but let's just say that like the first 2 steps is to like really dissect a certain article, come up with 3 questions. Based on the questions, come up with a couple of like search queries, throw it in, like understand what are the top 5 research papers are talking about, synthesize them, write a memo, and then do one, right? So all these things can be done by human, right? But it can also be kind of like broken down and be done by machines and by the AI. So in a way, like if you're able to break down the parts whereby it does not need human and machine can do it, from organizational point of view, you should do it as long as like the output and the outcome remains the same and the users get like what they want, right? I have to say this, right? It's a bit geeky, but if you think of it from like organizational point of view, actually the most important part about like that the things that I learned is that you want to build an AI product that speeds up like massive amount of content, right? Running evaluations is so important, right? You just have to make sure that the evaluation consistently, or rather the content and output consistently is like of a certain benchmark and standards, right? And that part is like super important. So I would say that at the end of the day, right, I echo your sentiment, is that the part about evaluation, right, is at the end of the day, right, is still down the craft, right? The craft of like, what is the definition of a good content? Yeah. Like, is this video good? Is this film good? Right? This is the taste. Taste that can't be like we are trying to replace that with AI. Yes, you can put math to that, but I'm not gonna talk about that. But fundamentally as human, right, you still have to score it against machines. And whether a product is good, right, is still a very human thing. So I would say that it's less about like job replacement, but more about job augmentation. Yeah. So you replace the things that can be done by machine and double down on things that only human can do and do really well.
Let me call TikTok. Okay. I'll honestly, I would say I'll be lying and tell you what is gonna happen. Right? Because a lot of this are all determined by the platform. And I think even as creators, even as content, publishers like ourselves, we are at the mercy of what what's the dominant platform of the day, and what are they prioritizing, right, from an algorithm like point of view. But I think like I shared briefly earlier, short form content right now, it is still the norm. A lot of people are still consuming short form. And I think long formats are all like starting to come back in the form of podcasts, in the form of micro dramas that's been, appearing in Douyin or even in the local space. So longer formats of content are definitely slowly starting to creep back. But it's not that people don't want to consume longer format anymore. I still watch my Netflix, just that maybe I don't go to the movie theater as much because I need to pay $40 like every single time. But I think longer format of content done in a short form storytelling method is still, it's something that I talked about, and I feel like it is something that is gonna be what people are experimenting. Whether it will work or not is another thing. And why I say so is because, especially for a market here like Singapore, right? Uh, Content creators survive off working with brands, right? And we need to produce content at scale. And the issue with longer format is that it requires a lot of effort in terms of production. Right, we need to invest a lot into creating a 10 episode, or we want to do, entire season of like podcast. It requires a heavy amount of investment, and therefore it is very hard to sustain. But where are we going to get the money from? The truth is that IMD is not going to throw the money at you and say, "Hey, create organic content for fun." They're not gonna do that. Right? You have to find that source of funding from somewhere. And if all you're relying on is how you have been working with brands, it becomes a challenge. I think that is why longer format content is just not very sustainable here in the Singapore ecosystem unless you are backed by the government, or you're part of a bigger media group here in Singapore where they have the funds to throw for you to create content just for fun. Right, but for general, I'll say creator economy at large, longer format is something that is very hard to do aside from it being a one-off passion project. I just want to create something longer for fun. But if you're going to do it consistently and then sustainably, I think the monetization is the key challenge. Yeah. So yeah, hope I can answer your question a little bit. Yeah. Thank you.
Do you both want to
That's a format like I was saying, two buckets, right? If it's entertainment, any formats that like hit us with the highest dopamine, that will be the best format, right? Because that's like our jobs to be done, one day we entertain. If it's about professional settings, then it's all about like getting the insights fastest and making a decision, and then using the information to make a decision and take an action, right? So whatever form, you can be an agent or whatsoever. That doesn't.
you have anything to add?
The wild guess, it's just a wild guess, is that it will be very, I have to call it bifurcated, two extremes. So for entertainment, it will become more and more short form because of dopamine, as you mentioned, and also because of the need to be to manage costs as well. That's number one, and to maximize reach. And on the other hand, if you're going for retention and going for information, I think that will go for the long form. But you do that based on, so for instance, some podcast series where the good ones in the US, they would drop an episode when they drop an episode, and they can spend 100 hours producing one particular episode, which runs hours on end. So the wild guess is there will be two buckets that are very different from one another.
I mean, first of all, like we allow SEO for most of our content. Yeah. So actually, like our SEO grew like crazy because we produce so much more like Google and Google things as insightful content. So I think it's the same as any technology, right? So we just have to pivot and find the best use, right, of the technology. So like I say, when it comes to like monetization, anything that is anti-AI we do, right? Things that machine can't produce and we do it really well. And it's the exact like jobs to be done by our customers, then we do. So those are the stuff that like these events and also like really deep content that only humans can do. Or rather like a group of journalists, right? But of course, this group of journalists also use AI, right, to synthesize stuff, to do some research and transcribe and everything. So, like I said earlier, is that like again, this is like a hypothesis, right? So the problem with any general tools, right, or any general platform is that they're not highly specialized, right? So for Tech in Asia, for example, like we have very dense information about tech and business, and again, very very focused on Asia. So this is like our IP. So one of the hypotheses is that like just like Craigslist, right? Craigslist eventually got kind of like decoupled, right? And you have like Airbnb, you have like car rentals and everything. So the thing over here is that like it's a net, okay? The hypothesis is that if we have like this deep moat, right, T-shaped type of like very deep content that surrounds like business and tech, very focused in Asia, right? That we cover multi languages but all in English. Like, can we do something about this information that only we have? Sure, maybe some of the LLMs might have it, right? But the retrieval might be a problem. Yeah, because I don't think there's any way whereby the retrieval can be so precise, right? So we're researching on that area. I can't say that like we have succeeded, right? But it's something that we are researching.